following show is a paid program.
Hey family, how you doing today? I am excited about today. We have Joyette Holmes with us. She's a former Cobb County DA and Chief Magistrate Judge, Atlanta, Georgia. First African-American woman to serve as the Chief Magistrate Judge and DA in Cobb County. She is truly Black history. We talk about Black History 365, and her sorority is AKA. I've got to do a shout out to them. Hello, lady. How you doing?
Hey, good afternoon. How are you?
Doing great. The AKA said I had to say something to them or I will not be able to sit here for a long period of time.
But of course, the first and finest Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated.
Absolutely. Lady, I was telling them that you are the first African-American woman to serve as a Chief Magistrate Judge and DA. How does that feel? You've broken the ceiling.
You know what? It was a tremendous blessing, very humbling to be in that space and place. You know, you have a dream of doing the work, knowing that you could serve in certain positions. But when you don't see anyone who looks like you in your community who are serving in that way, it can be daunting.
Mm-hmm.
But so to be in that position, to be named the first African American and first female in those positions, you know, not only for myself, but I have two teenage girls.
Mm-hmm.
So I want them to know that whatever it is they decide to do, that even if they don't see somebody in that seat that looks like them, that they can achieve it. It takes the work, it takes God's blessing, it takes partnership and people acting as surrogates to help you get to that space.
Absolutely. I'm glad you said that. And looking at it, 2 degrees, psychology and criminal justice. Let's go back a little bit. How did you even decide to go into law?
Oh, so the TV show Law and Order. I know that maybe that sounds unorthodox, but I didn't have anyone in my family who were attorneys. I had not, been in any way engaged in the criminal justice system, but I loved the TV show. I loved kind of that dichotomy of the investigation on the front side and then the court case on the other side of it, but still kind of showing the interaction of the two groups. So that's where I first got that desire. I did a little moot court in high school, which, gave me the experience of litigating, a choreographed case, so to speak. But so that's where my interest in law and knowing that I wanted to pursue law came from.
I love that. But the love that I had as I was reading your story, I said, and then she got a degree in psychology, probably needed.
Yeah, well, when you want to understand people and use that understanding in your litigation strategy, it helps for sure.
Absolutely. I love that part about it. I was just tickled when I saw that. In looking at it, let's talk about your road, the road that you had to take or that you have taken to become the first African-American woman, as well as female in those positions. Let's talk about that road.
Yeah, so, it just took being involved and doing work in different areas of the criminal justice system. So I started as a staff attorney for a judge in the Baltimore City courts, went on to be a public defender in Baltimore County and serving those who couldn't afford to hire attorneys where they had been charged with criminal offenses. When we moved back to Georgia, I was a prosecutor in the solicitor's office before opening my own law firm and representing private and indigent clients, and then going to be an assistant DA in the Cobb County District Attorney's Office. So all of those experience, as my favorite scripture says, work together for my good to get to the space of being the first Chief Magistrate Judge of color and female. So it definitely was not an overnight thing. A lot of work had to be done. a showing of knowledge in the work that I was doing, an ability to build partnerships inside and outside of the courthouse that would move forward the criminal justice system. Because having been active in the system, either as a defense attorney, a prosecutor, or a judge, I knew that there were some things that needed to change. Mm-hmm. And a lot of those things were, just having a different perspective and not having, in Cobb County, there had been one African-American female judge, and she was on the state court of Cobb County. She still is serving. But from the time she was appointed to the time I was appointed, no one else had been serving who looked like me, who had the perspective that I brought to that court at that time. And so those lessons learned and the experiences that I had in knowing that there was a different view to reach a result that could be trusted by the people it served and trusted by those who had expectations of what that looked like.
Absolutely. In what I was reading, I love this about you. You've dedicated your entire life to service. Why so?
That came from my parents. Mm-hmm. So, by profession, my dad was in the Air Force. He retired Air Force and then was a civil servant for 20 years after serving 20 years active duty. And my mom is a retired registered nurse. But civically, they were members of Shrine and Masonic organizations and auxiliaries that were always in the community, serving people in the community. I can remember being a kid in front of the Harvey's grocery store, raising money for an awareness for sickle cell anemia. We would be doing French fries, fish fries, and selling plates at the local lodge or American Legion to feed some of the neighborhood kids, to provide school supplies, and just doing things like that. So my parents were the type that, your work, your professional work does not end your service. Mm-hmm. You have to be out there and be one in the community that you've chosen to live in, to work in, to play in, to raise a family. Right. So my desire to serve definitely comes from my parents. It was ingrained in me, whether they told me or not. I saw them doing it. Right. And so it's really second nature.
I love that about you. And it's so needed now in this time in 2021. What do you see in 2021?
Well, unfortunately, what we see is people who have gone to their corners. Yeah. And aren't really willing to come together to make decisions that are best for the community at large and not just the corner for which they represent. Mm-hmm. What I found working in the courts as the judge, as the district attorney, is that you can't operate in a silo. So just because my professional work may dictate that it happen in a courthouse, we have to be inside of the community, working as partners and finding partners, partners who might be peculiar for those in the criminal justice system. And as an example, with one of the projects that we worked on that I'll talk about a little bit later, we were able to engage the Chamber of Commerce. We engaged faith communities because we know that it takes every single aspect to make things happen. Mm-hmm. And to provide opportunities that aren't provided in the court system, but are provided in our communities. And unless we step outside of our silo, unless we move out of our corner, we won't find those things. And in 2021, more than any time that I can remember, those partnerships and collaboration for the good of the community are necessary. Yes. And we have to, it doesn't matter our political persuasion, our gender, our race, our sexual orientation, our faith community that we choose to be believers in. We have to work together. Yes. We might have different ideas from the outset, but if you sit down and talk, you realize that the goal you want to reach is the same. Mm-hmm. So how do we start working together to reach those goals?
Absolutely. There's some more things. You're a lifetime member of the NAACP, and you have really dedicated your life as well as helped so many people that were, it seems, unjust or unlawfully subjected to things that they should not have. Let's talk a little bit about that.
So I have to say, I'm extremely proud of not just the NAACP as a whole, but the Cobb chapter. I've been fortunate to have a relationship with that chapter for a long time and have been blessed that they trusted me to look at those cases and aid in how they could further assist other people, those people incarcerated who felt like they hadn't been heard, they've been passed over. So while I was in my private practice, I would go and look at stacks of letters that had come in from inmates or inmates' families about what they felt had gone wrong in their case or was going wrong in their case, and could make assessments on those that needed to be looked at a little bit further. So, great work has come out of the NAACP, and I speak specifically to about the Cobb chapter, and just glad to be a part and that they trusted me to do that.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because so many people have referenced that the NAACP is not doing anything, but they're doing many things behind the scenes.
Absolutely. And, at least in these last several years, people have I think, equated doing something to politics.
Yes.
And of course, the NAACP is a nonpartisan organization. So they are looking for opportunities to help and to serve that are non-political. Now, when you say non-political, you have to laugh a little bit, because politics is involved in just about everything we do. Right. But what causes division is the party politics, because we know that life, liberty, and matters dealing with that should have no bearing on whether you are a Democrat or a Republican. And so, even though I have held office as a partisan elected official, you have not seen anything in my campaigns or in my work that designated that I was doing this because of party affiliation, because the work has nothing to do with party affiliation. I get some people give me a hard time for that, sometimes saying, well, you're not true. You don't really care about this side. But it's not that. It's just that as a district attorney, for instance, you have the ability to decide who gets charged, what they get charged with, what cases get reduced, what cases get dismissed, what the sentencing recommendations are, who goes through an accountability court or through diversion programs. And there is not one thing about making those decisions that is partisan. You can't tell me. And if it is for somebody who's serving in a different place, in a different role, then they don't need to be serving in that place or in that role. So, that's what I would share as to that. I am very much, everybody needs to have a seat at the table and have a discussion on just what's right. And that what's right is not led by person, place, creed, political party.
Right. You've also done a lot in criminal justice reform and youth empowerment. Why so, and why now 2021? Why is it so? Why do we need to do it now?
Well, I don't want to sound cliche, but I'm going to go ahead and quote the late Whitney Houston and just say the children are our future. I mean, as much work as you do, Cam, as much work as I've been doing, we are going to be moved aside here shortly.
Right.
I've been encouraged by, the work of some of the youth and all the things that went on in 2020. But likewise, we talk about this school to prison pipeline. And if we are not doing work to show kids that, education is important, because that even though you are not seeing someone who hosts a show, you don't know somebody who hosts a show, but that might be what you want to do. You don't know any lawyers. You have not seen anybody in your family be a teacher like the teachers that you see in school. But if we impact our youth right now at the youngest ages to know that just because they don't see it doesn't mean that they can't be it.
Right.
And to have people that are always around to encourage that, to encourage the lessons of teamwork, of character, of integrity, so that as they continue to move on, enjoy the experience of being in school, staying in school, so that they can achieve those dreams, then the future doesn't look as bright as they told us when we were in school. My middle school class theme was "Our future is so bright, you got to wear shades." And so I want that to continue to be the theme for youth that's coming up. So that's why youth empowerment is so important to me. There were people that fed into me as I was coming up. Mm-hmm. So why would I not continue to give that back and to feed into others?
I like that. As we go along, many people, and we talked about this a little bit, many people, as far as voting is concerned, is very strong now that we have to be cognizant that we need to be at the table. We have to vote. One of the main things is many people do not know that judges are elected. Many of them are. They just think that everyone is just appointed and they're just there. That's not so.
Right. So, it changes state to state and sometimes judgeship to judgeship. Mm-hmm. But most judges in the state of Georgia are elected. Mm-hmm. The appointments generally come up when, for whatever reason, the person who is in that elected office leaves office early.
Right.
So, for instance, when I was the chief magistrate judge, that is an elected position. But for some investigation that was going on with my predecessor, he was required to retire from the position, mm-hmm. and he retired before the end of his term. So I was appointed to serve until the end of his term, and then the following year I was on the ballot and elected in that position.
Right.
So yes, most are elected, and that is why it is extremely important to be cognizant of your local elections and who is up every year, because there is someone up every year. Municipalities usually have their elections in off years from governors and presidential elections. Mm-hmm. And I'm not suggesting that the presidential election and the gubernatorial elections aren't important, but I can tell you your school board touches you and your family's lives every day.
Right.
Your commissioners who make decisions about road maintenance, where things are going to be, zoning for your communities. Those are the things that touch you every day. Right. If you get out of your house, you have gone over a pothole or a bump in the road. And your tax commissioners who, collect those taxes for the county so that you have the good schools, the increased public safety, things like that. So local elections are important. Understanding that judges, district attorneys, sheriffs are elected is important, because you are talking about life and liberty issues and things, liberty that can be changed in a heartbeat.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned that. And we need to reiterate that every vote counts. Many people say, oh, my vote doesn't count. And I've had many people, and I've seen elections before, where the votes, if it wasn't the 100 or the 20 or the 50 people that didn't show up, that would have changed it.
Absolutely. Yeah, everybody's vote absolutely counts. Again, the narrative on the presidential elections, I think, keeps people away from the polls, and that's unfortunate. Mm-hmm. The electoral system that works for presidential elections, it's not the same in any other election that we have.
Right.
Voting for any other person. Each individual vote counts, and it means something. Mm-hmm. And, this year, in speaking in the state of Georgia, where there were record numbers of people who came out to vote, that's amazing. The issue is that a lot of people who came out to vote who had never voted before did not pay attention to issues on the ballot.
Right.
There was a desire for shift based on the presidential election, which is fine. I can't fault anyone for wanting to see a shift. But you cannot use that one position to make your decision on the whole ballot. And you cannot vote just for that one position and leave neglected those people who are serving you most closely by just voting a straight ticket because of your favorite letter of the alphabet as it relates to political party. So we have work to do to make sure that those people that were engaged to come out and vote in this last election, that are given knowledge, which is power, to elect the people that they truly know have the interest of their communities at heart. Who, a person can put out a flyer or a website and say whatever it is they think people want to hear. But it's our responsibility to look deeper, to see what they did before. And you're not a judge until you're a judge. So I'm not saying that just because this person had previously been a judge and this one hadn't, that you vote for that person. But whatever they did before becoming a judge, you need to look at their track record in that area, because that tells who they are. A person can learn a position, but you can't, but you've already determined and decided who you're going to be as a person. And that's important. My parents always said, you've got to work 100% more. You've got to be above reproach. Your character and integrity and the ethics by which you lead have to be top notch, or you can't serve. Mm-hmm. And so I've held that as true. Now, we have seen people whose character is not any of those things I just noted, but still came into a position that they can serve. But my position on that is that you've got to continue to do right every single day. Every day is a job interview, and you never know who's watching. And so people who are elected locally need to have that same knowledge that people are going to pay attention and are truly going to vote what's right, vote the issues, vote their conscience, not just their favorite letter of the alphabet.
Absolutely. Let's do this. We'll take a break and we'll be right back on the Cam Hill Show.
We'll be right back to the Cam Hill Show after these messages. The Cam Hill Show. If you'd like to advertise your business or become a sponsor, contact the Cam Hill Show at gmail.com.
I'm a part of the Prenatal Care Club now, taking all my STD tests.
Did you know your doctor's required by law to test you 3 times for syphilis and HIV?
Yes, my husband and I are making sure I get all 3 tests.
Good. Testing is the key to preventing congenital syphilis.
And good prenatal care is your first labor of love.
Glad to hear your husband is so involved.
Thank you. Yes, taking all my STD tests for syphilis is important to both of us. My prenatal promise is to prevent a stillbirth or miscarriage. To find out more, visit myprenatalpromise.com.
This pandemic has impacted the lives of many people living with underlying health conditions, such as asthma and diabetes. That's why avoiding COVID-19 is a top priority, and a vaccine will help prevent the spread of COVID-19. Please keep masking up and practicing social distancing to protect those close to you. And be ready to take your best shot when a vaccine is available. Protect yourself to prevent the spread of COVID-19.
Amazing things for you.
Move up at Ron Carter Cadillac. Drive the new 2021 Cadillac XT4 Luxury Collection for only $319 a month. The new 2021 Cadillac XT5 Luxury Collection for only $399 a month. Both for 39-month lease with just $1 down. Or purchase either and enjoy 0.9% APR for 72 months plus bonus cash. Gulf Freeway just 2 minutes south of the Beltway.
Shop smarter when you shop Ron Carter. RonCarterCadillac.com.
And now back to the Cam Hill Show.
Hey, family, we are back with Miss Joyette Holmes. Hey, lady, how you doing? We were just talking about about voting and how imperative it is to understand who you're voting for and why you're voting for them, because and the local elections.
Yeah. Yeah, it's extremely important. And so I hope that this next push, as we get ready for, here we have a lot of local city elections, that people will engage right now to learn who the people are who are saying they want to be on the ballot, who want to serve them and their families right now, so that when the election comes, there's not this scramble for information. As I stood at the polls and early voting lines, it was amazing to see the people who were going to the line who knew nothing about what the district attorney did, or that the district attorney was even on the ballot. They were there for the presidential election.
Right.
And you can't be in line and not know who's on your ballot and why you're going to put a check by one versus the other.
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought that up. Georgia was on the radar for a while about the voting bill that has gone forth, and we were talking about that. Many people had spoken about some of the things that they didn't like about the bill, but it's there. So let's discuss some of the things. One is being the hours that were restricted. You used to have a 7 to 7, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Now that's going to 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., I understand, but I think it's going to be a longer time for your early voting.
Right. So the guidance of the statute is that you cannot have election hours any shorter than the 9 to 5. Right. So, there was a lot of autonomy on each county election office to set up hours and days in which they would be open. Georgia has 159 counties, and when I was magistrate court judge, we would always say, and 159 different ways of doing it.
Right.
So there's, that standard that you can't have hours any less than 9 to 5. As I understand, if a local election office has the resource and can open longer, that they can keep those, like in Cobb County, for instance, voting hours were 7 to 7. So local election offices can do that. But in those areas of the new law that have been offensive, or that have provided additional things that have to be done to vote, I would just say, look and see what you can do right now today, right, before the local elections, before the next major election in the state of Georgia is the gubernatorial elections coming in 2022. If you need ID, go ahead and seek those out. There are a number of municipalities and counties who are already posting that they will offer free photo IDs that you can use and they're state issued, that you can use for voting. Learning where the absentee ballot boxes are going to be if you plan to vote by absentee. Know that you need to be intentional about requesting that absentee ballot if that is how you want to vote. So while there are going to be a lot of laws that come out that not all of us agree on, we have to figure out how to make sure that we continue to be engaged, that the people that we love, our neighbors, our sorority and fraternity members, our faith community members, our chambers of commerce, that everybody knows what they can do to change, the narrative. Unfortunately, the change in the law came at a time where there was a cry, a foul of the election, that there had been fraud, that all these things had happened. Look, I was not successful in my election in 2020. And I can tell you that my belief is not that it was about fraud. It was just about people voting favorite letters of the alphabet and not paying attention to what was actually happening in the community, what was being said, work being done. And when you've got a backdrop of people screaming fraud in situations where it wasn't that, and then you put out this law that changes the rules and changes it in a way that seems to be narrower, then you're going to get anger. you're going to get disbelief of why it happened. And the reason for it happening completely covers up what may be positive in the bill, what may have been put in place that actually does help a community. You know, in Cobb County, yes, it reduces the number of ballot boxes, but Cobb County had the money to spend more for ballot boxes, where you might have a county in a rural area of the state that could not afford any ballot boxes. So we just need to make sure that we pay attention to how we are impacted in our local areas and what we do to continue to stay engaged. I tell my kids, I used to tell my team members, is that we can only control us.
Right.
So what are we going to do? How are we going to think to make sure that the same people who were engaged in 2020 continue to be engaged, that we don't discourage people who made a difference in those elections, and so that they will continue to come out. And the more we do that, the more we have surrogates out there who will actually start saying, this is what's important for this community. This is what you need to do. These are the people who are representing those things that you feel are important. And I think that will be the time where we start to win, and that adversity does not stop us from doing and succeeding in what's right.
I'm glad you said that. I wanted you to come on today so we can prepare now. This is our time. We have to do our preparation early. I'm glad you spoke about the fact for the IDs. Let's get those things now. Let's put ourselves in place, in position, so we won't wait till the last minute and then scramble trying to do it.
Right, right. That's extremely important.
It definitely is. The other thing, too, is early voting, just pushing that, not waiting to the last minute. Get out there early. Know the information early, educate yourself, and then get out there. Don't wait until the day of.
Right. I agree. You know, there are some people that no matter what you say, there is something about the right that was extended to vote that to them means going out on election day is empowering for them. So, and that's fine. We just want people to be involved and engaged in the process. But when you have, you know, a storm that comes, you know, that day and something happens, you know, we are so reliant on technology now that there's so many factors that cause systems to go down. And don't let that impede us from being that vote that makes a difference. Because you're right, a presidential election is probably not going to be decided by 2 votes. But if we just think about the state of Georgia, it was tens of thousands. It wasn't even, you know, 20,000 or more, and we're in a state of millions. In your local elections, there can be a vote difference of 1 or 2 votes in these small communities. And so if you decided to sit down because you feel your vote didn't count, well, it definitely counted, and it may have counted to put somebody on a school board who cares nothing about the advancement of your kids who are in that school system, but more about their name and what that means for them. So everybody has to be prepared and ready to vote, and ready to vote in an informed way. So if you vote early, know early.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. The other thing, you've done a lot of things along the way, but Project Restore 360, I love that after reading it, what the idea of it was. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so, you know, it culminated from just watching a commercial came on TV, Labor Day 2019. And it just had me thinking about the reason for celebrating Labor Day and the economic impact that it has, not just for communities, but for families when people are able to work and earn a living. And at the time, I was the district attorney, and I know that some of the decisions that are made as district attorney prevent people from then being able to seek employment and being able to get affordable and appropriate housing for their families or continue their education. So, what I did with my team was take them back to basics of prosecution and reading out our prosecutorial code of ethics, which says that we were called to be ministers of justice and that the priority is not about the convictions or the conviction rates. It's how we engage and serve our community. And that means prevention, education, and restoration. So, yes, there are going to be people impacted by the criminal justice system because of choices and decisions they make. But the majority of people are not going to remain in custody, remain in a situation where they are bound by the criminal justice system. So what happens next?
Right.
So that's when Project Restore 360 was born. And it's for youth empowerment and criminal justice reform. The first iteration of that was a records restriction event. Most people know of it as expungements, where we had people apply who may qualify under Georgia law to receive an expungement or restriction. The law has existed for a long time. There were reforms done under former Governor Deal, who took on criminal justice reform and expanded some of those opportunities. But it requires a long process and there's a cost associated with it.
Right.
So that keeps people from being able to access it right there. So basically all a person had to do was submit an application to us. We'd process through our office, which meant looking at the criminal history, checking out what the background of the case was, and then making a decision on restriction. But not only talking about restriction, that basically means that a private employer or educator could not see what was previously on your record.
Right.
And there are certain situations, we're not talking about somebody who has been convicted of multiple armed robberies, violent offenses, nothing like that. But people who had been arrested for a crime but never went to trial, it was dropped. That has remained on people's records. Right. And just that arrest impacts their employment. So to be able to restrict that, and then we talked to all the judges in the courts in Cobb County, and all the judges signed off on sealing orders, which not only allowed for the restriction, but sealed the records in the clerk's office. Because most employers don't hire companies or don't check the criminal history anymore. They have companies that search the records of the clerk's office.
Right.
And so if your criminal history is restricted, but there's still that record out there, then it would be seen and still impact them. So we sealed the records. We had a convention center full of employers that were hiring on that day, people that they knew had been impacted in some way by the criminal justice system, but were hard workers, were skilled workers, filled paid training classes, had healthcare screenings there, had the voting machines there, because Georgia changed its voting machines so people could see how to operate those machines when they went in to vote. So many things that impact one person, which trickles down to their family, thus to the community. So that was the first iteration of Project Restore 360, and that happened days before we shut down for the coronavirus pandemic. But so when I left the DA's office, I did take that Project Restore 360 with me. We are in the process of creating a nonprofit and getting that authorized to continue the work of youth empowerment, as well as partnering with organizations and prosecutors' offices to continue to provide outlets for records restriction and job security.
Absolutely. Let's do this. We'll take a break and we'll be right back on The Cam Hill Show.
We'll be right back to The Cam Hill Show after these messages. The Cam Hill Show. If you'd like to advertise your business or become a sponsor, contact thecamhillshow@gmail.com.
I'm a part of the Prenatal Care Club now, taking all my STD tests.
Did you know your doctor's required by law to test you 3 times for syphilis and HIV?
Yes, my husband and I are making sure I get all 3 tests.
Good. Testing is the key to preventing congenital syphilis.
And good prenatal care is your first labor of love.
Glad to hear your husband is so involved.
Thank you. Yes, taking all my STD tests for syphilis is important to both of us. My prenatal promise is to prevent a stillbirth or miscarriage. To find out more, visit myprenatalpromise.com.
This pandemic has impacted the lives of many people living with underlying health conditions, such as asthma and diabetes. That's why avoiding COVID-19 is a top priority, and a vaccine will help prevent the spread of COVID-19. Please keep masking up and practicing social distancing to protect those close to you. And be ready to take your best shot when a vaccine is available. Protect yourself to prevent the spread of COVID-19.
Amazing things for you. Move up at Ron Carter Cadillac. Drive the new 2021 Cadillac XT4 Luxury Collection for only $319 a month. The new 2021 Cadillac XT5 Luxury Collection for only $399 a month. Both for 39-month lease with just $1 down. Or purchase either and enjoy 0.9% APR for 72 months plus bonus cash. Gulf Freeway just 2 minutes south of the Beltway.
Shop smarter when you shop Ron Carter. RonCarterCadillac.com.
And now back to the Cam Hill Show.
Hey, family, we are back with Joyette of Holmes, and we were just talking about the fact project Restore 360. I love that project, and the reason I do, it restores families. It restores lives. You bring people together and empower them to change their thought process, to change their lives.
Absolutely. And, so I talked earlier about partnerships and just engaging organizations and communities that may not seem to fit with the criminal justice system and criminal justice reform. But again, it takes all of us working together as a community to make these things happen and make these things work. Operating Project Restore 360 initially as the district attorney, so government public servant, the funds aren't often there to really do the work in the way that it should be done. Mm-hmm. But when you're able to talk about the project and talk about what's happening and what's going on, and for organizations like the Cobb Chamber of Commerce, for different faith communities, we had it at the Riverside Epicenter, which is the Family Life Center for Word of Faith Church, and other groups and organizations to say, you know what, I want to be a part of that. And say, however we can help, let us help. If we can provide the folders and the information that these the people who are engaging in this process need, we're willing to do that. Georgia Power donated things to go in the bags that we would hand out to people. There were just so many groups who said yes. And that's what you need, for people to say yes, because they see how it impacts them. No, they may not be a victim of a crime. No, it may not be their son who is charged with a crime. But those people who are impacted are your neighbors. Oftentimes they are members of your family. Right. They could be the person who is in the local restaurant that you frequent all the time. They could be your child or daughter's classmate. It touches you. It impacts you. You just have to think outside of that silo or that world that you're used to operating in, and know that you too can impact the work that's happening with Project Restore 360 and other organizations. The Georgia Justice Project were amazing partners along with Cobb County government to do and to put this program on, and to educate and train lawyers who were volunteering to help people even beyond the event that we had. So Project Restore 360 has been an amazing blessing to me, and I pray that it continues to be an amazing blessing to the people that it will serve in the future.
Absolutely. What advice would you give people that may want to run or may want to get into public office? What advice would you give them? Because you ran and you saw it from, daily.
Absolutely. Well, character and integrity and ethics are above all the most important thing that you have. You will have people who will encourage you to say a thing, to do a thing, and if you know it to be wrong, don't do it. It may mean that you don't win the seat. Right. And I can tell you from having been told no, from not being the top person, the top vote getter in an election, being told no stings. But being able to look back and know that you have done the right thing means everything. Right. And I know that I could not sit here with you. I could not do the work that I am continuing to do, have the opportunities that I've had if there was a question in that character, if there was a question in the way that I did the work. So first, examine yourself and know that when you go forward, you're going forward in truth. And that I know seems peculiar when we watch the TV, when we see political ads, and when you hear people talk. But I know that being peculiar wins in the end. So be educated on the role and in the space that you want to serve in. Right. You know, some people see there's a wave. Let me jump on this wave. There's this opening. Let me squeeze into the opening. And it may get you that seat. That wave may get you that seat. But when you get in there, you have to do the work. Right. And if you don't know the work that you're going into, the people that you're serving, the lives that you'll impact, it's going to hurt not just you, but that community for a long time to come. And repairing a community does not happen overnight. Repairing a state, repairing a country does not happen overnight. Talk to your family. Your family becomes a part of the journey. Right. So make sure your family is all in, that you are putting things in place to ensure the health, mind, body, and soul of you and your family before you do that. If it's your dream, if you've got those things in place, go for it. You know, you can't be afraid of the loss, because I can tell you the first time I lost was the best opportunity for me, because it caused me to learn more about my community, not to make assumptions on what my community needed, but actually knowing it because I had been around, met people, formed partnerships, learned things that I didn't know. So those are the things that I would, the advice I would give somebody wanting to run. Don't be discouraged. Right. Go after the dream. Go after the reason why you were on this mission, to do the thing that you want to do. Examine yourself and do it for all the right reasons.
I'm glad you said that. And then the other thing, what I love about you and what you always say, no doesn't mean no. It means not now,
Right. And all things work together for your good. I know that when I was told no, there was something about that experience that I needed to have that I would be able to use and develop later down the line. So, just push. No means not right now. And there's a reason for the not right now. Right.
Absolutely. What have you learned along the way?
Trust my gut, to listen a lot more than you speak, to be collaborative, to make sure you are a part of a team who likewise believes in the mission and how you want to move forward. Being a leader does not mean being a team of one. You absolutely have to be a team of we, a team of us, to make sure things go forward. There's so many times that I have walked into rooms and spoken to people that you can tell already know it all. And, I say that, and I should put air quotes around it, because if you're in a space where you believe you already know it all, you have lost.
Right.
Because there is something to learn every single day, no matter who is in the room. When the person who is taking down the minutes of a courtroom or the minutes of a meeting that you were in as an executive, that person has something to contribute.
Mm-hmm.
They are privy to something that you as an executive or leader will never be privy to because of the position you sit in. So make everybody a part of the conversation. Have a seat at the table for everybody. Leave it open so that when there's a new perspective, there's a place for that perspective. And those, are the things that I have learned, the tools that I continue to use as I serve in the position of member or partner in Gregory Doyle, Calhoun, and Rogers, where I am serving now, being on the board of the local Chamber of Commerce or nonprofits, is that we always talk about being intentional and leaving a seat open at the table for a different and new perspective to come in.
I'm glad you said that. Looking at you being Black history and just embodying that and just saying to yourself, being the first, what would you like to say to the viewers and others about that, just that thought?
Yeah, so being Black history, which you said at the top, is
Right.
a 365
Yes.
day a year thing. It's not something that should be just celebrated in a moment.
Right.
It is important. There is a reason why it's acknowledged. A lot of times I would be listed, or the headline would be, first African American and female. And not that I got offended, but it was so important to me that my qualifications be spoken as well. Because there are always corners of a room that are going to say, oh, she just got that because she's a woman.
Right.
She just got that because she's Black.
Right.
Well, there are so many people who look different from those who have served, who are qualified and can do the work. And being a good reflection of that, and being Black history that people can look to say, I pray that it will be said, long after I'm gone, is that, and she did it the right way.
Right.
And the people who were naysayers knew and would recognize, and that I would not be the last. And that's what's most important about it. Yes, I was the first. That's something to celebrate. And I'm so proud of it. It is such a blessing for me. And I know for those young women or older women who had not seen that. But I can't be the last. And the work that I continue to do has to make sure that history continues to be made, even though maybe not the first, but that it's a continuing cycle, and that those qualifications and that heart and that passion continues to be seen by everybody.
I'm so glad you're with us today because of the fact that young girls and older women, like you said, are able to see someone that looks like them, to say, I can do it, or I can be in that position, or I can, because many, like you said earlier, we don't see a lot of the pathway of what a person in those positions that maybe do not look like us.
Right.
And we have a long way to go, but we're making it.
We are. And, don't expect it to be an easy journey. I'm still on the journey.
Yes.
I talk about journey with Joyette. I'll figure out what I'm going to be when I grow up. But, it's just more than that. There are so many ways to serve outside of the positions that we may currently sit in.
Right.
And if the mission is true to you, you'll continue to do that regardless of the position that you're in.
Absolutely. Thank you, lady, for everything you're doing. Thank you for the opportunity of the interview. Thank you for deciding, and as well as thank your family for being a part of this journey, and also just letting us see what excellence looks like, Black excellence. I love that.
Thank you.
Just being able to say We see you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Can't stop, won't stop. I'm going to keep pushing. I'm going to stay on the journey. And I appreciate you being out there, Cam, and just sharing people's mission and the things that are going on, because I've learned from other people who speak and to hear how they journey to that point. And so I appreciate you, and I thank you for having me on today.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank Ebony and LaShondra for everything they do. Thank you for just being there, and continue. We're going to look forward to see where you're going, and we too are going to push as well as for the voting and try to help in some way out of Georgia, because you guys are really killing it. You guys are doing it.
Well, yeah, keep us lifted for sure. Exactly. And I'm grateful for all those who have helped me and to bring me here today.
Thank you so much. The Cam Hill Show, 12:30 to 1:30 Central Standard Time daily. See you then. Bye.